Well, this episode on Rethink Real Estate, we have Leo Robles, who's a team lead over 2,200 agents. Leo's from the EXP network, and we're talking to him about building teams and the trials and tribulations that he went through in discovering how to do so. It's an absolutely fascinating episode where there's a few major points of anybody that's looking to build teams, then it really is a great deal of insight to understanding a value proposition. A lot of people think that lead generation is the primary source when he speaks about so many different types of lead generation, but the pure value proposition being in the coaching element of being able to maintain a team. We talk about the recruitment side of it, where he gets the talent from and how he goes about it. This is a very insightful episode that if you're either looking to build an organization, an office, or your own internal team, this could be the absolute information you need to hear. Hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, Leo, welcome to Rethink Real Estate. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity, man. I'm grateful to be here.
So I'm a little bit shell-shocked at the moment because you and I were just having a quick conversation before we hit start on the podcast. You just said 22,000 agents in however many countries is you're basically who's under your management, and then your own personal team operates in 8 countries and all these different numbers. I really want to just dive straight into that immediately because I want to know more about it.
Absolutely. So 2,200, right? So that is the vision of the future, though. I am going to go to 22,000 eventually, right? But,
there you go.
So I currently manage 2,200 agents. We're in 28 different states. We're also in 8 countries. And I love to build teams, all about culture, aligning myself with the best people. I always look for a values match, right? That's the most important thing. And I think about my team and my agents like we would think about it as even in real estate, right? We always like have our ideal type of customer that we want to work with, right? Kind of the 4 qualities that I look for whenever I partner with anybody is hungry, humble, smart, and coachable. Like those are the 4 key ingredients that I look for in everybody. And that's basically how what I've been doing so far. It's been an amazing ride, and just extremely grateful for everyone that is part of it. And I really feel like we're only getting started. So thank you for kind of, I hope I answered your question, but that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the thing that I really want to understand is that how does that work from a management perspective? 2,200 agents, are they under your direct report or you have other team leads, or how has that all worked? And it's a loaded question because then I want to know how you got there.
Yeah. 100%. So basically, what I do is I offer coaching training, and I lead from the front, right? I think somebody that leads a team, you got to lead from the front and be a demonstration. So I do my best to put myself out there, whether it's on social, at events. I mean, and just being an ideal avatar. Like, hey, this is what an ideal. This is what you should be doing in your business, right? So I'm embodying that first. So the thing is that we have a very leveraged platform. I basically focus on that, which is my lane. But we also have specialized departments that handle basically everything else, whether that be the broker support or the technology support or the transaction support. So I have a powerful team because I wouldn't be able to do everything on my own, right? So what I do, my one thing is that I look for talent. That's what I do. I look for talent. I help the talent develop. And then I also have a handful of leaders that I've partnered with that also accumulate up to the 2,200 agents, right? So basically the most important part of, I think, of a leader is to basically replace yourself. So what I've done is throughout my journey of partnering up with different agents, then I found, the individuals that were rising up to leadership. And then those are the individuals that I basically partner with, work with at a very, very high level. And we have a training program basically for everybody to plug into on a weekly basis. I will do anywhere from 8 to 10 classes that are just, I like one of my favorite ones that I get a lot of really good feedback is our market update. We do that every Monday. We do a content creation mastermind on Wednesday that I personally lead as well, because I think social media is such a big part of what the industry is, where the industry is going. I mean, that's where it's at now. So what I do is that I identify the best talent on my team that is really doing well on social, and I basically interview them, ask them a bunch of questions. How are you doing it? What kinds of apps are you using? So I personally lead 3 of those classes, and then my other leaders within my organization, they lead something that they're specialist in. Like I got some Mike Ferry guys, right, that really crush it with the scripts, dialogue. So we have that. We offer it 4 days a week. And then we have other new agent trainings, right, for the individuals that just want to get to 2 transactions a month.
Yep.
So there's a squad, I would say, or a team behind this whole thing, right? So
Yeah. So
partnering
you've
with
got something. You've got something for everybody. It sounds like you've got somebody that wants to do the social media approach. You've got somebody that wants to do the Mike Ferry, sort of hit the phones hard with the scripts. You've got somebody that wants to sort of just do a couple of transactions here and there and wants to understand it from a grassroots level perspective. So the thing that I'm impressed with immediately, though, Leo, is that you're saying that your job is essentially doing the things that nobody really wants to do. And what I mean by that is that the recruitment. Okay. I always see a great deal of people shying away from the recruitment element of building a business. Second part is that a lot of them don't want to do the training element either because they might not have a great deal of content to sort of bring out. So would that be sort of an accurate assessment of sort of how things look? You offer something for everybody, and then obviously you're leading from the front in the sense of the recruitment element?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think it was very, very well said. Yeah, recruiting, the coaching, training, and one of my other things that I really do well is events. I do
Okay.
events. Like that's another big thing that also impacts culture in a big way. And the really awesome thing is that you get to allow your shining examples within your organization to get highlighted, right? Because they get some stage time. And then the other thing is that the people that want to learn from them that they look up to, it's like a win-win-win. It helps you to build your company, helps you to build your culture, and acknowledge the leaders that are really shining.
So, how do you manage your time? Because, at the end of the day, this is something that probably a lot of people are thinking about going, well, you've got all of these people in a like you've got leaders within the company that would be in direct report with you. And obviously you've tried to replace yourself, but then ultimately you probably have a lot of people that are reaching out to you on a daily basis, asking for advice or things along those lines. Or do you think that the best defense is a good offense, or however way that saying goes? Are you constantly reaching out? Is that what you're doing?
So great question. One of the things that we do really well is that we have a very like the onboarding, the experience. That's one of the things that we really focus on. When we have somebody that joins our company, we give them a crash course on what they need to know about our systems, what are the most important tools, and we also help them to download them, give them an orientation. And I have somebody that's on my staff that just that. Her whole job is just to literally walk somebody from A to Z on the entire platform, set them up appropriately. And then they also know if they have a broker question, where to go. If they have an accounting question, where to go. If they have a legal question, where to go. If they have a tech question, where to go for that. So they're fully equipped day one, which I think is essential, because then it becomes basically chaotic, right? If you don't prepare somebody, then you're gonna be inundated with calls. But the thing that happens is that I don't get as many calls as you would think. I once everybody goes through onboarding, they kind of know the rhythm and the tempo. They know also where they're going to have exposures to me within the trainings. And then I also have a Calendly. So everybody, if somebody did want that's in my organization that wanted to schedule some time with me, they can just easily go to my calendar. I have that within my calendar already booked out, 2 hours on a day where somebody can just pop in just for some coaching or some ongoing training that just wants to be specific on a one-on-one. So I leverage my Calendly. I have the onboarding, which I think is absolutely game changer. I think if somebody doesn't have that, it's the same thing if we were to pick up a listing, right?
Mm.
We're setting expectations with our sellers. And before I did the leadership role, I was very dialed in on listings. That was my whole business. I mean, I've served almost 2,000 families throughout my career. 70% of them were all listings. So I took that same approach. When I would sit with my sellers, who's going to be the point of contact? How soon do you want the sign up, in the front of the yard? the pictures are going to be taken at this day, all of those things. So it's all about setting expectations. So I think that the onboarding experience is kind of mirrors and matches that in the business. And I think that the recruiting is something that we all do in the business, right? In the business, we recruit listings, we recruit buyers, and here in my role is we recruit talent, right? But we're always recruiting to our business, right? So I think that that's how I reframed it in my brain, right? And that's how it makes sense for me.
Well, I think that it makes a great deal of sense then. There's a little bit of a parallel that I've just drawn with you, Leo, and us not knowing each other very well. Trying to get to know each other through a podcast, I think, is a great way where I'm really genuinely curious about people and what they're doing and how they're building it. And the thing that I've sort of put two and two together, if you've been 70% of a listing orientated agent, and recruiting is just hand in hand with that. Like that's unbelievable. Representing buyers might be a little bit different because it would just be just a tiny bit different in that game. But realistically, is that just right there marries hand in hand. But I've got a quick question. Like, so say that I wanted to go and get listings at the moment. One of the differentiators that we love is our non-distress auction process. People pick up the phone to an expired listing and they reach out to that person. And our company itself is about 75% listing orientated.
Mhm.
Now, that said, is that we know how to do that. Where do you look for recruits? What's your expired phone call list? What's your sphere of influence phone call list? How does that look?
For the recruiting aspect, correct? Is that so?
Correct.
Basically, my main thing is that I focus on individuals. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. So what I focused on is focusing on the people that I know, that know me, that I've done a transaction with. So I went, I go back all the way, to the beginning of my career. Those become my calls, right? People that I've done business with, people that I built relationships with over the years through events. And so I would say, just like we encourage somebody when they're building their business, right? Go after your warm market. That's exactly what I've done at a very high rate. Just getting in touch and in tune with everybody that already knows me, that I have a relationship with. And then the other thing is that I also just I'm very intentional about seeking out talent through social media like Instagram and Facebook, and following and finding the new talent and building through people that are part of my organization. So I would look at somebody that is already part of my team. I look at their sphere and I start to tap into their friends. And that's basically how I also build there. So it's more of a instant connection. And that's the benefit that we have through social media, by the way. It's like in the past, I used to just call somebody, just off of the off of the MLS and like, hey, congratulations, I saw you just listed a property in our neighborhood here. I just wanted to introduce myself. We'll probably see an offer come through with through me or one of my agents. So I just wanted to introduce myself because I'm all about building relationships. So that's like an easy way, right? Like you can reach out to people that are dropping the listings on the market. That's an easy conversation, and you're coming from a place of contribution and value. And then the other thing is, like, the easiest way is just going through the building through relationships. That's
Yeah.
the best way, I would say, in my perspective.
So let's talk about this then. Like, there's an agent let's say that there's an agent listening to this podcast at the moment, and they're like, "Wow, this guy's built a huge team. It seems a little unattainable for me at the moment."
Mhm.
Where would you suggest they start, Leo? Is there a particular mentor? Is there a particular video? Is there a particular training? Is there something that you would recommend that they look at, refine, all of those things before starting?
Yeah. So I think when it comes down to building a team or a brokerage or an organization, like we'd like to call it within our company, I think it all starts with you leading yourself effectively, right? That's the number one thing. If you can lead yourself effectively, then I think that you have basically the gift to be able to do that for other people. So you have to lead yourself first and develop yourself as well, because the one thing that happens when you're building a team or an organization, that you can bring people along the journey, but if you don't have a system set up to allow them to succeed at the highest level, and you don't have a clear path for them, then you're kind of just turning your wheels. You're gaining somebody and then you're losing people. You're gaining people and you're losing people. So if somebody's just kind of starting off and they want to just kind of like figure out what way to go, develop yourself, number one, right? Really develop yourself. Um, One thing that I've done really well too is that I've done a lot of coaching and training at a very high level to understand my own emotional system so I can be composed, because you're dealing with so many different personalities and people. Just like in real estate, we're dealing
Yep.
with so many different people. So I think emotional intelligence is one of the things that I think somebody has to master before they start to lead people effectively. Because if you're a short fuse, right? If you're triggered by anything that anybody says, then it's going to be a matter of time, because before that spreads throughout your culture and say like, well, you can't even handle a conversation. Like, I don't want to go to him for any help. The moment that people don't come to you for help, that means that they don't trust you.
Yeah.
So you have to start with yourself first. That's what I was saying. Like, it's the most important is like emotional intelligence, leading yourself effectively, and then really having a vision of what that looks like. If it's a sales team, I always recommend a sales team to be lean and mean. You want to just grow a team because of demand. And there has to be the lead generation component built into it. And there has to be the value exchange, because typically a team, you're going to have a split. You're going to have maybe a 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever the case is. So if you're going to have a split and you want to build a team, not build it through ego, because I've been there, done that as well. I built a team because of ego. I just wanted to have a bunch of people, and I didn't know any better. It was earlier on in my career as a leader. And then I figured out that as a sales team, you really want to be super hyper intentional, that you're building it with that in mind, that you're building by demand, because there is so many leads that you cannot handle yourself now, that now you're employing someone else, that you're giving them the opportunity. Once that person is maxed out at capacity and they are dropping the ball, like you kind of like max their capacity out, then you staff another agent on your team. That would be the way to go about it. And then just having, again, very clear indicators of what it is you're looking for, the culture that you're looking for. One of the things I look for if I'm building a sales team is I'm looking for the right personality, the values, more than even it doesn't really matter to me if they have an immense track record. If they have an immense track record, but they don't have the greatest personality, then it's not going to be a good culture match. So you have to be hyper intentional, also kind of figuring out, well, what is my culture like? What kind of individual do I want to partner with? So just having that very clearly defined. That way, when you do attract that person, you can clearly identify who they are when they're in the marketplace. And then it gives you the opportunity to really, if somebody doesn't match that, then you can lead them in a different way. So that would be for like a sales team. And the organization, it's a slightly different conversation. I'm looking for leaders, other leaders that are wanting to develop and grow and expand. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the same structure. So it's kind of like two separate conversations, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that I'm really happy. Like when you started talking about that, we were only 14 minutes into the podcast, because so often there's a great deal of value that comes at the end of the podcast episodes, and I'm worried that like the people won't listen all the way through. And I'm really glad that we got to that, because I think that what you just went through with the emotional intelligence element, the expectation of others, and how you've framed up the expectations of yourself in that. I think that is just invaluable when it comes to building a team, because what I took out of that the most also was, I think you said, like don't build it based on ego. And that's kind of like building a team for the sake of building a team. Like why are you building a team? Just because I want to say I have a team, like that sounds gross to me.
yeah. And it's not profitable, right? I mean, come on, at the end of the day, we're going to be spending time away from our family. I mean, if we're doing this business to run a profitable business, right? So the profitability has to be, I would say, at the forefront of everything we do. I mean, this is not like we're just hanging out. No, we're doing business. This is what we're about. So yeah, very
Yeah, no,
important.
very important. The thing that I want to sort of segue to is that I think that right now you've got a very firm belief in what you're doing, and you've got proof of concept that ultimately it works, right? Clearly based on your success, which is pretty coveted. Like, again, it doesn't take a genius to Google your name and you can see you absolutely everywhere and your success that you've had. But realistically, the hurdle that I've seen so many people go through when it comes to this team building, or they're building an office, or they're building the organization side of it, is that they take somebody leaving very personally.
Yeah.
And I think that this comes down to that emotional element that you spoke about before. But
Yes.
for example, I run Harcourts, you are with EXP, but you have a different organization. you and I had a conversation before this. You're like, hey, do you want me to respect the company? I'm like, no, I really don't. I want my agents to know, and I want everybody in the organization to know their options, because we offer a certain value. You offer a certain value. They need to feel value wherever they ultimately are. It's not a prison. You can't hope that they don't hear about something better. That's just a horrible way to adjust business.
Right.
So leading back to it, how does somebody that's building a team not take it so personally? How does somebody building an organization not take it so personally when that person decides to go elsewhere or exit?
Yes, that's a great question, man. Great question, by the way. Um, and that took me a while. Just like in the beginning when I started building my sales business, it took me a while when I would lose a client, or it would take me a little while to bounce back. I remember early on when I started to build a team, I definitely took it very personal, and I really, and again, because I wasn't aware of how this worked. But so my piece of advice is, again, don't take it personal. Definitely make sure that you're 100% clear, and that's also part of the expectation conversation now. So that's what I would say is it's a huge nugget to have that be part of the conversation up front when you're partnering up with somebody for your team. Just let them like, you know what, this is going to be what we're going to be doing. You're most likely going to be here 1, 2 to 3 years. And I just want to let you know it's okay. I want to continue to have a relationship. The moment that you feel like you've outgrown my organization and you want to go elsewhere, I just want you to feel 100% confident that you can come to me and have a conversation. So having that expectation also mitigates a lot of the problems. I didn't have that kind of conversation in the past. So then when somebody would leave, I would take it very personal, and it was very painful for both sides, right? Because the individual that's also moving on to a new organization, I mean, they don't know how to have the conversation. It's very difficult for them as well, and they're not, they're a lot of the times if they have been there for a couple of years, it's a lot more difficult. So um, what I would say is going back to the emotional intelligence, that's very important, right? Not taking it personal, understanding that that's part of this business. And also looking at every single opportunity, every single person that leaves, asking them a question. What was it about their organization that you saw that there was more value? Learn from every experience versus just get resentful, right? Make that a lesson versus like resentment, right? Because when you resent like somebody leaving the organization, there's no learning. And
Mm.
I think one of the things that we must do as leaders, and when we're leading organizations, we got to look at ourselves and take full responsibility for everything. We got to assume that everything that is happening is our 100% responsibility. The moment that we place that on someone else, then that's a very slippery slope, and then we start to blame other circumstances. And obviously, we would never tell our agents that either, right? If we have agents in our organization and they lose a couple of listings, we're not going to say, well, they're terrible sellers, that's why you got fired. No, let's earn a coaching opportunity. Let's actually look at what happened. Let's walk through the process. Oh, okay. So let's walk. Did you set them up with the expectations? You know what happened, so you can kind of identify. Okay, you know what? There was a breakdown in communication here, right? So always taking it as a learning opportunity. And again, I think that starting off the partnership with that expectation that they will eventually leave is a great way to be. Because what I did find is when I was running a sales team, is that two things would happen over time. People would the people that would do really well, they would eventually want to become me,
Mhm.
and they would leave, or they didn't do well and then they blame me and then they left anyways, right? So people people would leave regardless, right? People would leave regardless. So I saw that as an opportunity. I'm like, well, how can I solve this little kind of situation? Like, how can I elevate this, right? So that's where I'm passionate constantly about developing myself, because it's all about continuing to raise your leadership lid. The moment that we feel as leaders like we got it and like we got a grasp of it, then that's the moment that we don't have it.
Mm.
So I think having, even as leaders, having deep humility to continue to learn, continue to understand, and really listening and being open to taking that feedback, even though it might be difficult, right? Like, hey, I'm leaving because of this. I'm like, okay, well, actually take that feedback and actually implement it. Again, not easy, right? I'm not going to say it's an easy process, but over time, as you do it more, then you start to realize, okay, this is human nature. Don't take it personal. Let me learn from this. Let me evolve from this. And let me put in systems and processes in place. That way I can mitigate this, right? So you kind of start to identify your system and also get direct feedback of where you need to improve, which is really awesome because that's what we're looking for as leaders as well. Is like we want to understand where the leaks are in our business. And
Right.
if we don't know and we assume and we kind of guess, then we're fixing problems that don't even are not real problems. So we really need to go to the source of like what it actually is.
It's kind of like it's for example, like when we put a survey into the network or the survey on somebody leaving or whatever it may be, it really gives us refined things to work on. Whereas I've seen myself in the past from a company perspective is that you create these projects just for the sake of filling the cup of projects up, and you work on this crap, for lack of better terminology, that really then you release it and nobody uses it, and it's like, well, why is nobody using it? Well, no one asked for it in the first place.
Nobody asked for it. Exactly. Exactly.
So
100%.
So speaking of products, speaking of all those different things, it sounds like you've just one point that I just want to reflect on before asking you this question is that sounds like your onboarding process is incredibly buttoned up. It sounds like it fixes about 80% of the issues that you've seen. Like it sounds like you set expectations from the very beginning.
Yep.
It's the same way in a listing that ultimately, like you said, if you set it up correct from the beginning, there's no missed expectations along the way.
Correct.
They know how to communicate. They know where to get resource, all that stuff.
Mm.
But I guess that the value proposition of somebody joining a team, that refining of a value proposition, I think that obviously is something that a lot of people are fearful of around building a team around, well, what do I offer that's tangible, ultimate value for somebody to stay with me or be with me or that I could profit from? I know you mentioned leads before. Like, could I get a bit of philosophy from you around leads and around also the factor of value proposition? Because I think a lot of people believe that they can build a model where they simply just buy Zillow leads and they spend a great deal of money on that element, and then they wonder why agents get burnt out because they're not really building a business that is running after buyers and it's not really working and all of those different things. So again, you might have a few different philosophies to that, but I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, for sure. Great question as well. So I think that there's many different ways that I can answer your question because I have multiple teams that run it differently, right?
Uh-huh.
Every team is slightly differently. They're running it slightly different, but the one common thing is that I see across the board is that there has to be a lead generation platform or model incorporated into it. And it doesn't mean that you're giving leads, right? There's two different models. Some of my teams teach people how to fish, and some of my teams are giving them the fish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's two different models. Both of them have their pros and cons. I think that the pros to giving people fish, especially early on in the beginning, especially if they're a younger agent, they don't necessarily have a huge network. They're going to need to build a database with something. So I think that that's a pro of having like a Zillow or like a Redfin or Ojo, OpCity. There's a bunch of different platforms out there that people could sign up for, not pay anything up front, and basically just pay at close. So what I would recommend is having some sort of component that way, and also identify. I mean, each team should again start because of demand. So if somebody has a farm and they have a database, or they have a great, like today we did a training on open houses, right? You can build an entire business on open houses. You can build an entire business on prospecting on the phones and calling neighborhoods. You can build an entire business. I mean, just calling expireds and for sale by owners. You can build a business by having billboards and having a guarantee sale offer. And also, I have somebody on my team that actually does the auctions as well.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that. It's a huge, unique value proposition, right? Especially for higher end listings. So there is again the lead generation element has to be okay. We're going to decide what the lead generation element is, number one. And the value prop is going to be coaching. It's going to be coaching and development and helping people to build their business. That's going to be the value prop. And then the other thing it's going to be, it's a culture. I've seen so many people leave teams simply because they just don't fit in with the culture anymore, right? So people would leave faster, even if they're making money. People would leave if they don't feel appreciated or valued. So just having that Even if it's because some leaders are high D personality and they're not really that person. So if you're not that nurturer and that's going to bring that culture together, you better have somebody on your team that is. You got to have somebody that is that nurturer. So there has to be that element as well. So where they have the coaching, and again, identifying what kind of model you're doing.
Yeah. So you're saying, I love what you're saying actually, because you're not saying that like the lead, like giving somebody the fish, to use your terminology, which I like that idea, is that it's not about giving somebody the fish or teaching them how to fish. Okay. It's really about the coaching of how to teach them how to fish, or how do they convert, or how they cook the fish, so to speak. You
Yep.
know, it's about the coaching that really is the value prop, which I think is very much overlooked completely, because really it's the path of most resistance is how to refine the coaching element of a value proposition within your business.
Yep. And it's a living element, by the way, too, right? So that's the other thing. It's a living element because it continues to evolve. You're definitely going to have your pillars, but it's going to be evolving as your business continues to basically transform and change. But there is obviously going to be some pillars that are the main pillars. Like, I have some mega teams that are just crushing it just with open houses, and they build their entire business on open houses. I started my business just exclusively open houses.
Yep.
And then I have a specific process on how to do that. And then the follow up, obviously, of generating all those leads. So there again, I think that just being clear, like you have to have a clear, what is my lead generation strategy, and building it again with the intention in mind. If you're building a sales team, that it's because you have the demand. If you don't have the demand and you don't have the lead generation, or you don't have an abundance of leads already, referral, repeat business, then there's really not, it's not a point for you to develop a team. And maybe if somebody has the ability to recruit and wants to coach and train, but they don't necessarily want a team, that maybe they're going to want to build an organization where they still offer some value, but it's not direct, like, hey, this is my sales team and I'm offering you leads. Like, you already have your leads, you already have your business. I'm just going to help you and coach you and refine your process. So there is, I think it's about identifying each person's skill,
Yep.
and where they naturally fit in, because there's so many different ways that we could do this business. There's so many different ways. I mean, I got some guys and gals on my team that just crush it in commercial. I mean,
Yeah.
it's they're making a lot of money, and they're doing a lot less transactions than it takes in a residential. So again, it's about identifying what you're passionate about, and not trying to do something that you're not necessarily great at. Because also think about, this is going to be a decade, 2 decades of a business. So what I see a lot of people, especially right now, a lot of people are just burnt out. I
Mm.
see a lot of people burning out, right? A lot of people are burning out. And again, because they haven't effectively built their business, they don't have effective SOPs, like system operating procedures, processes, and they're kind of just running on a hamster wheel, constantly rebuilding over and over and over and over, adding new systems all the time. And I think it's just sticking with one thing and just sticking with that process over time is going to have way better results than just keep chasing the next shiny object.
Do you have an opinion on the type of people that are attracted to different models? And what I mean by that is that there's been some people on this podcast and people that I have conversations with on a regular basis from all over the industry and all over different areas in the US, and it's kind of like people have set opinions that if you are giving people the fish, so to speak, you're attracting people that aren't as capable and they're more transient and so on and so forth. But then if you're teaching people how to fish in the prospecting element side of things, is that you're getting people that are more committed. However, you do have more people that once they discover the formula, they're moving on and wanting to open their own business at that point. Like there seems to be this correlation with the types of people, businesses that run. Do you have an opinion on any of that? Like the types of people that are attracted to
Yeah,
the types of models?
I think the interesting, there's a lot of different models in the industry, and just like you, Rick, I'm aware of all of the different models. I think it ultimately comes down to the people. People follow people. People follow people. That is the thing that I've seen the most. I mean, different models are going to have slightly different value propositions. but really people follow people. The reason I got to this organization in particular, EXP, when I partnered up with my business partners, I highly respected them, and I still do. I mean, I work with them almost on a daily basis. So it's a relationship business, right? And people follow people. So yes, each person is going to attract a slightly different type of individual. 100% accurate. But I don't think it has to do necessarily with the like the model
The
itself. It
model.
has to do more with the people that are part of the model. And depending on who you talk to, you're going to have a different flavor. So you could talk to somebody that's only been at an organization 6 months, and they're going to tell you a completely different answer. Somebody that's been there 5 years is going to tell you a completely different answer, depending on their experience and their background and everything that they've been through. So I think, kind of like the most, my opinion is that just people follow people, right? And the most important thing is just, again, asking yourself, what is the type of people that I want to attract? Who do I want to be in business with? And focus all time, energy on that. That is where our focus should be at more than anything else.
Well, Leo, I've taken enough of your time today. I think that that's a wonderful way to roll out. There's been a great deal of wisdom that's shared. And the thing that I love about this podcast is the fact that anybody that's going through the team experiences or believes that they want to go through that, they should listen to the trials and tribulations that you've been through on this podcast. And obviously, they can reach out to you on all of the information in the show notes that we're going to provide as well. You're obviously an open book. Again, you and I'll stay in touch as well. But again, thanks for joining us on Rethink Real Estate.
I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Leo. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.